I stood there, boots sunk into the dirt, staring at the audacious notice taped to my ranch gate. Bold red letters screaming, "Pack your things and get off this land in 72 hours, or we'll have you dragged off." It bore the smug seal of the Homeowners Association, signed with a flourish by Diane Wilburn, the HOA president, who strutted around like she owned the whole county. Little did she know I'd just sealed the deal 3 days ago to buy their precious clubhouse lease. Clutching the paper in one hand and my steaming morning coffee in the other, I caught sight of Diane across the field, arms crossed, perched, on her golf cart with a smirk, probably expecting tears or a frantic packing spree. Instead, I took a slow sip, set my mug on the fence, pulled out my phone, and dialed my attorney. "Let's triple the rent," I said, my voice steady. He hesitated. "You sure you want to go that hard?" "They gave me 72 hours to leave my own ranch," I shot back. "Now I'm giving them 30 days to pay 3 times more or get the hell off my property." With that, I hung up and strolled back inside, savoring the secret I'd guarded for months, that their fancy clubhouse, pool, tennis courts and parking lot sat on land I'd quietly purchased through a holding company. It was time to turn the tables. But let's rewind a bit so you can see how I, a humble rancher, ended up locking horns with these clipboard-wielding overlords. This tale isn't just about land, it's about respect, community, and never underestimating the quiet ones. Before I dive deeper, I've got a question for you. Which city of the United States are you watching from? Drop a comment and share with us if you've had any confrontation with the HOA. We'll narrate your story on our channel. Where are you watching this from? Drop it in the comments below. I'm curious how far stories like mine travel. Now let's meet the characters that stirred the dust in my peaceful life. I'm Matthew Blake. People call me Matt. I inherited Blake Ranch from my grandfather, a proud piece of land that's been in our family for 3 generations, right on the outskirts of Willow Creek, Texas. I'm not flashy. I wear denim shirts, drive a rusty pickup, and spend my mornings feeding animals and fixing fences. I like peace. I value kindness, but I won't be bullied. Then there's Diane Wilburn. Imagine a woman with tight lips, a tighter haircut, and an even tighter attitude, president of the Willow Creek Lakeside HOA. She moved in 5 years ago after retiring from corporate marketing and immediately began transforming the HOA into her personal army citations for brown grass fines, for wrong trash bins, tickets for parking too close to the curb. Diane didn't just follow the rule book. She wrote it. There's also my neighbor and closest ally, Ricky Dawson, mid-40s, single dad, works as a mechanic. He lives in the last house before the ranch border. And ever since I helped him fix a busted water line during a winter freeze, we've been tight. Ricky's the kind of guy who knows everybody, hears everything, and never backs down when something smells off. And finally, there's my late grandfather, George Blake. Though he's been gone 6 years now, everything I do on this land has his voice behind it. He was the kind of man who'd sit with a stranger, share a biscuit, and still outsmart them at poker. His biggest advice, Matt: people can take your time, your money, your peace, but don't ever let them take your pride. I should have remembered that sooner. See everything started about 2 months ago. I began noticing strange visits on my property. Strangers, walking dogs too close to my fences, drone-like neighbors taking photos, HOA officials jotting things down near my barn. Ricky told me Diane had been trying to reclaim land she believed the HOA had rights to for future development plans. She thought part of my ranch sat on unused community reserve. Total lie. I called the county clerk's office. I pulled every deed and land survey my grandpa ever kept my family's. Ownership of that land was airtight, but Diane didn't care. She was building a case not on truth but on persistence. One day I got a letter saying I had unauthorized livestock structures near a nature buffer zone, then another saying I interrupted HOA aesthetic, continuity with my ranch, gate color, black iron, not their required brown wood, then came a fine, then another, then the 72-hour eviction notice. They wanted to squeeze me out quickly. That's when I made a move of my own for months. There was a rumor floating around that the owner of the lot where the HOA clubhouse sat was retiring and selling off land parcels. No one took it seriously. I did. Through a friend in commercial real estate, I formed a holding company called BH Acquisitions. It had no obvious ties to me, and when that land came up for sale, I bought the parcel in cash. All legal, all above board. They never saw it coming. 3 days before I got the eviction notice, the deed was in my name. They taped that paper on my gate, not knowing that their clubhouse lease was expiring in less than a month, and the new landlord was me. So I did what any rancher who'd had enough would do. I called my lawyer and told him to draft a new lease with triple the rent, effective immediately. But I didn't send it yet. I wanted Diane to sit with her little victory for a minute. The day after I got the notice, she came down the gravel path with her clipboard in hand and 2 HOA board members in tow. I was by my truck, tossing hay in the back. She didn't even wait for a greeting. "Mr. Blake, you've been served. You now have 71 hours. The board has unanimously agreed that your property violates HOA expansion code, and since you refuse to comply, you are now a liability to the community." I wiped my hands on a rag and smiled. "Appreciate the update," I said. She seemed confused by my calmness. "You don't seem concerned." "Oh, I'm concerned," I nodded, "but not about what you think." That afternoon I drove into town and personally hand-delivered the new lease documents to the HOA office. Tripled rent, due in 30 days, or vacate the premises. Diane didn't see it until the next morning, and that's when all hell broke loose. She called an emergency board meeting. People from the neighborhood were confused. The HOA newsletter skipped a week. The community Facebook group was filled with questions. Why is there a rent notice on our pool? Why did Diane just storm out of the clubhouse in tears by evening? Ricky showed up at my door. "Dude," he said, eyes wide, "you just hit them where it hurts." Diane's losing her mind? She called the mayor. I laughed. Let her. But just as we clink-ticked beer bottles on my porch, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from my property camera. I opened the app and froze. There were 3 people dressed in black hoodies sneaking around the back of my barn. They were cutting the fence, trying to let the cattle out. My heart dropped. I tossed the beer and sprinted off the porch with Ricky right behind me. We jumped in the truck and sped down the dirt road, dust flying, adrenaline surging, because whoever they were, they just messed with the wrong rancher. I floored the gas pedal so hard I nearly left Ricky behind my tires, chewed up the dirt as I roared toward the barn. The wind howled through the open windows, but all I could hear was my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I had one prayer in my head: please don't let the cattle be out. I pulled up just as 2 of my cows came stumbling out through a gap in the fence, cut clean through like someone had used bolt cutters. The hooded figures scattered as soon as the headlights hit them. One jumped the ditch and ran into the woods. Another bolted toward the neighbor's hedge. The third, he was slower, tripped over a feed bucket. Ricky leaped out of the passenger seat before I could stop the truck. "Hey!" he shouted, sprinting. After him, I jumped down, reached for the spotlight in the back of the truck and aimed it at the barn. I saw 2 cows halfway down the road and another halfway inside my workshop. My heart sank. My workshop had glass, dangerous tools, paint cans. A scared cow could destroy Everything in seconds. "Get back," I yelled, trying to wave the animal out gently. "Come on, girl, come on." But before I could deal with the cows, Ricky called out. "Got him!" he shouted from the ditch, panting hard. "Matt, I got one!" I jogged over, gripping the light tight. When I got there, I froze the guy he tackled. He wasn't some random punk, it was Aaron Mills, HOA board, secretary, Diane's pet puppet, always the one taking notes during board meeting, always nodding along when she barked orders. His hoodie had slipped back, revealing his sweaty, guilty face. "You're trespassing," I said, Ty.
Voice low and dangerous and vandalizing, you know what that means. It wasn't supposed to go this far, he gasped. She just said to scare you, I swear, just scare you, that's it. She, Ricky growled. Let me guess, Diane. Aaron's silence confirmed it. I pulled out my phone, snapped a few pictures of his face, his cut gloves and the broken fence behind us. You're going to stay right here while I call the sheriff. I said, no, please.
Aaron begged, shaking. "I have a family, kids." "She told me you were a threat, that if we didn't act, you'd take the whole neighborhood. I didn't know she lied about the lease." I narrowed my eyes. "So you admitted Diane sent you?" He nodded slowly.
Yes, but she didn't tell the board the land belonged to you. She said she had sources saying it was disputed. She just wanted to scare you into leaving. By then, Ricky had his arms crossed, lips curled with disgust. "Cowards," he muttered, "sending lackeys
to do her dirty work." I called the sheriff, and to their credit, they came fast. Small towns don't play when livestock is involved. Trespassing and damaging ranch property, especially fences, comes with real consequences. Aaron was taken in. He begged for forgiveness the entire time, even tried to throw Diane under the bus harder, but I wasn't interested in revenge. Not yet. I was focused on damage control. We worked till dawn repairing the fence. The cows were mostly unharmed, just shaken. My workshop had a shattered window, and one cabinet fell over, but no major damage could have been worse. I got 2 hours of sleep that night. By mid-morning, I was back at the ranch gate when a black SUV pulled up. It was Diane, dressed in an immaculate cream suit, like she was going to a courthouse wedding, sunglasses on clipboard tucked under her arm. As usual, she didn't get out right away, just stared at me. Then, finally, she stepped out, her heels crunching on the gravel. "You think you're clever?" she said, her voice cold as steel. "I know I'm clever," I replied, not smiling. "You had no right to buy that land without informing the board. We have a shared property agreement." "No," I said calmly. "You had a lease. It expired. You didn't renew it. Now the owner has changed. That's not illegal. That's just bad business on your part." She took off her sunglasses slowly. "You'll ruin this entire community." I shrugged. "That's
funny, because you tried to ruin me first," she snapped. "You don't belong here, Blake. You're a relic. The future is in development planned and community harmony, not your stinking animals or your rusted tractor."
And yet I said, "My rusted tractor now owns your tennis court." Diane's jaw clenched so tight I thought her teeth would crack. "I want a meeting," she hissed, with the board. "And you today." "Fine," I said. "I'll come, but I'm bringing my lawyer." That evening, we met at the clubhouse, ironically in my building. I walked in with Mr. Templeton, my gay-haired briefcase-wielding lawyer, who looked like he hadn't smiled since the 9s. Diane was already seated with the board, looking like a high school principal about to expel a student. "I believe we're here to discuss rent negotiation." Templeton began flipping open his documents. "As of June 1st, rent is set at the new agreed amount. That agreement is unfair." Diane cut in. "It's extortion, actually," Templeton said, pushing his glasses up his nose. Its market-adjusted value, we had it appraised, and according to county regulation, the HOA is free to vacate if they decline the new lease. The board looked uneasy. A few members glanced at each other. Nervously, I have signatures from over 40 residents who object to this, Diane argued. And none of them own the building, I said coolly. The room fell silent. One board member, Susan, who had always been more neutral, finally spoke up. Diane, why didn't you tell us about the expiring lease? I thought it would renew automatically, Diane said stiffly. You thought wrong, Templeton said, and you attempted to forcibly evict my client from his own land. That could be grounds for a harassment suit. The room went colder than a January barn. Diane leaned forward, her voice soft but venomous. This isn't over. And she stood up and walked out. Susan, after a long pause, turned to me. Matt, can we talk privately? I nodded outside under the dim glow of the clubhouse.
Lamp, she leaned against the wooden rail inside. I don't agree with what Diane did, but some of us are afraid she controls everything. She even convinced people your ranch was sitting on reserve land. It's not, I said, gently. I know, and some of us are
ready to walk away from her, but we need your help. That's when the idea came to me. What if, instead of driving them all out, I took control of the HOA, turned the place into something good again, something honest? But before I could tell Susan my thoughts, we heard a loud crash, glass shattering. Then a scream. We ran around the corner of the clubhouse and saw flames. Someone had thrown a firebomb into the HOA office, and I had a terrible feeling this was just the beginning. The fire wasn't massive yet, but it was angry. Orange flames curled out from the broken front window of the HOA office like claws reaching for the sky. Inside, papers sizzled and popped, smoke coiled up into the night air, thick and bitter, and the unmistakable smell of gasoline hit my nose. Call 911, Susan screamed, already fumbling for her phone. I ran to my truck and yanked out a fire extinguisher. Ricky had stocked it just last month, muttering something like, with all this HOA nonsense, we'll need one sooner or later. Guess he was right. I charged toward the building. Susan tried to stop me. Matt, no, what if it explodes? Then I'll explode with it, I growled and pushed forward. I blasted the flames through the window, one hard burst after another, until the extinguisher ran dry. Ricky appeared out of nowhere with a second one. He joined in. By the time the fire department arrived, we'd knocked most of the flames down. Only the curtains and part of the front desk had been lost, but the message was clear. Someone wanted to destroy something or someone, and we all knew who the target was as the crowd gathered, neighbors in pajamas, firefighters doing their job, sirens fading into the night. I watched Diane appear again, but this time she didn't look. In control, she looked terrified. She stormed up to me, her voice trembling with rage. This is your fault, she snapped. You provoked them. You made people angry. I didn't tell anyone to throw a firebomb into your office, I said evenly, but I did warn you. Actions have consequences. You want to destroy everything we've built here. No, I said, I want to fix what you've broken. And before she could respond, the sheriff's cruiser pulled up. Sheriff Mendes stepped out, wide-shouldered and calm-eyed, the kind of man who could make a barber freeze. Just by walking in, he'd known my granddad, he'd seen my cattle born, and tonight he was not happy. Morning, Matt, Diane, he said, tipping his hat. Even though it was nearly midnight, Mendes, Diane said, her voice already trying to turn sweet. I need you to arrest whoever did this. This is an attack on the HOA, on community structure. He held up a hand. Ma'am, we'll investigate, but first I need to speak with Mr. Blake privately. Diane scowled as he led me aside. What's going on, Matt? He asked. We've had more drama from this neighborhood in 1 month. than we've had in the whole year. I told him everything: the trespassing, the cows, Aaron's confession, the expired lease, the new rent, and now the fire. Mendes listened without interrupting. Then he rubbed his jaw and exhaled. "Sounds like this HOA's been stepping way over the line. Can you charge Diane?" I asked. Aaron said she sent him. We'll bring Aaron in again, ask for a formal statement, but I'll be
honest unless he's got proof. Diane's walking for now. I nodded. I didn't like it, but I understood. Stay alert, he warned. This isn't over. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, the town buzzed like a kicked beehive. The HOA Facebook group exploded
with posts. Why was there a fire at the clubhouse? Is Matt Blake dangerous? Was this retaliation? I heard Diane forged documents. And the wildest one, I heard Matt is secretly the owner of the HOA. Can he do that? Meanwhile, Diane sent out an emergency
HOA newsletter, this time filled with fear-mongering and half-truths due to recent acts of vandalism. We are increasing HOA security and proposing emergency fees to protect the community from outside threats. Outside threats. I had lived here my entire life. She wasn't just trying to control the board, she was trying to turn the neighbors against me, and worse, some of them started listening. One of them, Miss Linda R. Byrne, marched up to my gate later that afternoon, holding her little white dog like a baby and yelling, "You're bringing chaos to our peaceful town, you and your livestock."
I wanted to laugh instead. I stayed calm, ma'am. I've lived here since I was a boy. My granddad raised cattle before most of you even had lawns. Well, she huffed. This town's changed, and maybe it's time you changed too. She stormed off, dog yapping. By sunset, I was ready to give up. I sat under the old sycamore near the front pasture, my hat pulled low, chewing on a dry stalk of grass. That's when Susan pulled up. She got out quietly, walked over, and handed me a folder. "What's this?" I asked. "It's
everything," she said. "Emails, meeting transcripts, fake minutes." Diane edited proof she knew about the expiring lease and hid it from the board.
I stared at her. "Why are you giving me this?" "Because I believe in this community," she said, "and because you're the only one not afraid of her. You said you wanted to fix things." "Well, this is your hammer." I opened the folder and skimmed through. The documents. She was right. This was a smoking gun. I could expose Diane completely. But that's not what shook me. It was what I found on the last page, a bank transfer from the HOA account into a private account in Diane's name, $10,000 labeled as
Community Maintenance Fund, except it was never reported, never logged. Diane had been stealing from the HOA. I looked at Susan. "Does anyone else know about this?" "No, just me. And now you. This changes everything." And as the sun dipped behind the hill,
something clicked in my mind. It was time to go public. But first, I had to be smart, precise, strategic. I'd seen Diane's playbook, fear lies, intimidation. Now she was going to see mine that night. I made a plan. By dawn, the entire community would know what kind of leader they really had. But just as I began typing my announcement, there was a knock at my door. 3 sharp, angry pounds. I opened it to find Sheriff Mendes. His face was grim. "You need to come with me," he said. "Why, what happened?" He held up a search warrant for your workshop. He said, "We got an anonymous tip that you're storing illegal equipment tied to the fire." My jaw dropped. "They think I started the fire." He nodded. "Somebody's trying to frame you, Matt, and they're pulling every
string they've got." I stood there stunned, holding the door frame like it might collapse under me. "Sheriff, you know me," I said. "You know my family, you know this land." "I do." Mendes replied, his voice calm but heavy. "But I've still got to follow through."
This tip came from an encrypted source. County pressures high. After the fire, we can't ignore it. Ricky came jogging up from the barn, wiping his hands on a rag. "What's going on?" "They think I started the fire," I said, through gritted teeth. "Ricky, blinked, then shook his head. No way, that's garbage, Mendes nodded grimly. I agree, but that's not enough. Let's get this over with. We all walked together toward the workshop. I unlocked the doors and stepped back. The deputies entered. First, they searched every drawer, every cabinet. I watched their boots track over my clean concrete floor, my tools, my welding rig, even the old lawnmower my granddad rebuilt touched, moved, measured Mendes, stayed silent, watching every step. Finally, one deputy called,
"Out, sheriff over here."
We rushed to the far shelf. There, under a canvas tarp, was a black duffel bag. I'd never seen it before in my life. The deputy unzipped it, and I felt my stomach twist. Inside were 2 glass bottles, duct tape, and a red gas can with a scorched handle. Everything needed to make a Molotov cocktail. Mendes stared at me. "I swear to you, Sheriff," I said. Slowly, "that was not here yesterday. Someone planted that." Ricky stepped forward. He wouldn't do this. "Mendes," exhaled Matt. "This doesn't look good. I have to take it in. I won't arrest you yet, but the investigation just got real complicated by noon. The whole town knew. The gossip train out here moves faster than the internet." I hadn't even finished explaining things to Ricky before my
phone buzzed with texts from friends. "Dude, you got raided. Tell me it ain't true." "Matt, did you really torch the HOA office?" Susan called too, her voice trembling. "Matt, please tell me they didn't find something." "They did," I said, "but it was planted." "This is Diane. She said she's setting you up. She knows you're about to expose her." And that's when it hit me. The folder, the proof Susan gave me, it was still in my house. I sprinted to the drawer where I had locked it. Gone. The folder was gone. I stared
into the empty drawer, hands trembling. No broken lock, no forced entry, just vanished that night. Ricky and I sat in the truck behind the workshop, trying to piece it all together. She had someone sneak in, he said, maybe the same person who planted the fire stuff. But how I muttered, "I have cameras, then maybe we should check the footage." That was it, the cameras. I'd forgotten to review them. I pulled up the feed on my laptop, scrolling back to the night before the workshop. Camera showed nothing until 2:14 a.m.
A shadow moved across the gravel. Slow, careful, the figure crouched low, moved to the side window, popped it open with something long and thin. They slipped inside. I zoomed in as much as I could. It was a man in a hoodie, but when he turned, just for
a second, I caught the profile. It wasn't Aaron this time. It was Tyler Wilburn, Diane's son. He'd graduated college last year, always looked angry, spent more time at the golf club than in a classroom. Diane had mentioned him during one HOA speech. Son Tyler will help oversee future expansions when he returns home. And here he was breaking into my property. I saved the footage, backed it up in 3 places, and emailed it to myself. "Let's see her spin this," I muttered. But before we could act, another blow came. The HOA issued an official statement, printed, sealed, delivered to every home due to escalating hostilities from Mr. Matthew Blake and the dangerous circumstances surrounding recent events. The HOA has voted unanimously to begin
legal action to seize contested portions of Blake Ranch under the Emergency Safety Clause. I crumpled the letter in my fist. "They're trying to take my land." I said. "They know they can't," Ricky replied. "They're bluffing, but people believe them," I said. "Even folks who used to wave at me now cross the road." My heart felt heavy. My granddad's voice echoed again in my mind. "Pride's good, Matt, but truth's better. You don't fight liars with fists, you fight them with light." I needed a way to expose Diane and Tyler publicly, loudly. Then I had an idea, a town hall meeting 1 week away, a live community gathering where everyone could speak, everyone could listen. I'd show the video, I'd read every lie, I'd let everyone see who Diane truly was. I got the
permit approved at Town Hall the next morning, the venue, the local school gym, neutral territory. I printed flyers, sent emails, made phone calls, people started replying, curious, divided, nervous. And then the morning of the meeting arrived. I wore my cleanest shirt tucked in tight, hat polished. Ricky helped set up the projector. Susan brought copies of backup documents. We had over 100 chairs lined up. People started showing up by 6:30 and the gym was packed. Even local news showed up with cameras. At 6:59, I stepped to the mic. The murmurs died down. I cleared my throat. My name is Matt Blake. My family's owned this land for 3 generations. I'm here tonight, not to fight, but to tell the truth. I clicked the projector, slide after slide, showed every fake citation Diane issued, then the forged lease minutes, then the stolen money. People gasped. Then the video Tyler. Sneaking into my workshop at the end, I turned to the crowd, ask yourself, is this the leadership you want? Dead silence until someone stood up. It was Peter Malaloy, the treasurer of the HOA. I moved for Diane's immediate removal as president of the Willow Creek Lakeside HOA, he said, and just as half the room stood in agreement, the back doors slammed open. Diane stood there, cheeks, red eyes blazing. "You think you've won, Matt Blake?" she growled. She marched to the mic, snatched it from the stand, and snarled into it. "Let me tell you something, this town was falling apart before I arrived. I made it clean, I made it safe. You think you're heroes? You're just noise." And then from the corner of the room, a voice rang out, "Tell us where the $10,000 went, Diane." Everyone turned. It was Susan. Diane froze, then bolted for the exit. But Sheriff Mendes was already there. "Not tonight," he said, holding up cuffs. "You're under arrest for embezzlement and conspiracy to commit vandalism." The room exploded in gasps. Cameras flashed. Neighbors whispered. And just like that, the queen of the HOA had fallen. But this story wasn't over, because as she was led out the door, Diane looked back over her shoulder and shouted, "My son won't let this go." The sound of Diane's voice echoed through the gym like thunder after lightning. "My son won't let this go." Even after being handcuffed and exposed, she still had the nerve to threaten us. As Sheriff Mendes escorted her out, the crowd broke into a mixture of hushed murmurs and loud reactions. Some neighbors were shaking their heads, a few clapped softly, but most just stood in stunned silence, the kind that comes when something big breaks and nobody knows what happens next. Susan walked up beside me. "We did it," she whispered. "Yeah," I nodded, "but now we've got to deal with her son, Tyler Wilburn." We hadn't heard from him since the security footage revealed him sneaking into my workshop, but if his mother's threat meant anything, he wasn't going to disappear quietly. The next morning, I was sipping coffee on the front porch, watching the sun rise over the pasture, when Ricky pulled up in his truck. He jumped out, holding a manila envelope. "This just came to my place, no return address. Thought you should see it inside," were 3 grainy photos. The first showed my truck parked outside the town hall. The second showed me talking to Sheriff Mendes outside my ranch gate. And the third was a photo of me sitting on my porch, coffee in hand. It was taken from the trees near my property. I stood up instantly, scanning the woods. Ricky reached for his pocket. "Someone's watching you," he said. "They're trying to shake you." My jaw tightened. We're not backing down that evening. I reported the photos to Sheriff Mendes. He wasn't surprised. "I've got officers keeping an eye on Tyler." He said, "He's keeping quiet, too quiet, but don't worry, we're on it." But the very next day things got worse. It was supposed to be a regular Wednesday. I was helping a neighboring rancher fix his fence. Ricky was out back, greasing the tractor around 11 A.
I got a call from Susan. You need to get to the HOA building. Now, what happened? Someone broke in again when I arrived. The front door to the HOA building was splintered, hanging off the hinges. Inside the place was trashed, papers everywhere, broken.
Glass, overturned chairs. It was sabotage, but this time, whoever did it left a message. Spray painted across the wall in dripping red letters. We're taking it back. Ricky stood behind me, arms folded. That's Tyler. Susan appeared from the back room, shaking. Her head sheriff's on the way, she said. But the neighborhood's scared, Matt. Some think you provoked this, that Diane was keeping things under control. I sighed. I just wanted to bring truth to light. I never wanted it to become a war. Susan glanced. Out the broken doorway, well, it is now, that night, I held a second community meeting, this time at the town square, just to calm nerves, to explain everything again. I brought copies of the proof, explained the sheriff's ongoing investigation, and promised that my goal was peace, not chaos. Most people listened, but not all. A group of Tyler's friends, young, loud and rowdy, stood in the back, arms crossed. They didn't say a word, but their glares said enough. After the meeting, I went home, exhausted. I sat on the porch again, same spot, same chipped mug. That's when I heard it, a loud boom, not a gunshot, not a car, backfiring, a full-on explosion. I leapt to my feet, heart racing. Smoke rose from the direction of the barn. Ricky came running from the back. Matt, barn's on fire. We sprinted across the field. Flames licked the wooden walls, roaring louder by the second. The dry hay inside fueled it fast. I grabbed the hose. Ricky ran to grab the fire extinguishers, but it was spreading too. Quickly the barn, the same barn my grandfather built with his own hands, was being swallowed by flames. I didn't care about the building, but the animals. "Open the gate!" I yelled. We flung the side doors open and let out the goats, the chickens, the 2 horses. They were panicked but safe. Just as the roof began to cave in, it took an hour for the fire department to contain the blaze. When it was over, the barn was nothing but smoldering wood and twisted tin. Sheriff Mendes pulled me aside. "We found the remains of an ignition device," he said. "This wasn't an accident. Tyler, we're almost sure, but again, no fingerprints, no witnesses." I was silent, burning the barn. That wasn't just vandalism, that was war. That night, I sat with Ricky and Susan on the porch. None of us spoke for a long time. Finally, Susan said, "We need to flip this, take control, make sure the HOA doesn't fall back into their hands." Ricky nodded. "Let's shut them down legally. What are you suggesting?" I asked. Susan leaned in. "We use the HOA charter. Against them, call a vote, elect a new board, with Diane arrested and her son under suspicion. We can take it back. The people just need to believe it's possible. And if Tyler tries something again," Susan gave me a firm look, "then we handle it together." So that was the plan, a full HOA board election, public, transparent. And this time it wouldn't be about control, it would be about
rebuilding. But 2 days before the vote, something terrifying happened. I got a text from an unknown number. "You took my mother down. You won't like what I do to your legacy next." Attached to the message was a photo of my grandfather's gravestone, defaced,
covered in red spray paint. I gripped my phone so tight it cracked. Ricky saw the photo. He didn't say a word. He just stood up, grabbed his shotgun from the wall, and said, "Enough's enough." The next morning, we were at the cemetery before sunrise. My grandfather's headstone stood in the far corner of the old oak field, just beyond the ridge overlooking the hills. Normally it was a peaceful place where I came to clear my mind, talk to Granddad, or just sit in the quiet and remember who I was raised to be. But that morning, it was desecrated. Red Spray paint streaked across the stone like blood. Big, angry letters read "Traitor Family," and beneath it, smaller letters, sloppier, but "Crewer burn with your barn rage" is too small a word. For what I felt, I dropped to my knees, trying to scrub the paint off with my sleeve. Tears welling up behind my eyes, Ricky stood behind me, like a statue gripping his shotgun, tighter with every breath. Susan arrived not long after, her face pale, when she saw the damage. This is beyond personal," she whispered. "It's always been personal," I said softly. "But now it's sacred." He never hurt anyone, and they came after him too. Sheriff Mendes met us shortly after. He knelt beside me, eyes scanning the scene, and pulled out his phone to take photos. We've got security footage from the cemetery gate, working with town records. Now if we can ID the car." "It was Tyler," I muttered. He looked at me with a raised brow. "We can't confirm that I know it was him," I said. Standing up, fists clenched. Who else would go this far? Mendes didn't argue. "Look, Matt, the town votes tomorrow. That's what this is about. He's trying to push you to the edge. He wants you to snap. You give him that. You give him the power." I knew he was right, but it didn't stop the storm brewing in my chest. We cleaned the gravestone the best we could. I promised Grandad under my breath that I wouldn't back down, that I'd win this fight not with fists but with truth, and maybe a little Texas grit. By the time the sun was overhead, we had flyers all over town, HOA emergency election. June 3rd, 6:12 p.m. at Willow Creek Community Hall. Be there that night. Susan and I held a live stream. QA on the HOA page answered every question, calmly showed receipts footage and proof that the HOA could be reclaimed for good. We got over 500 views in 1 hour. People were listening. Now some neighbors who'd been quiet before began reaching out. "Mr. Jenkins, a retired teacher. I voted for Diane once. That was my mistake. You've got my support now. The Whitaker twins who owned the bakery. Our rent doubled under. Diane, you helped us when the pipes burst. We remember that even young Ellie from the corner house, barely 16, made a sign that read, 'Vote for Matt. He fixed our fence for free.' It wasn't about being a hero, it was about being a neighbor. That's what Diane forgot, and what Tyler never understood." Election day came fast. The Willow Creek Community Hall was packed tighter than a rodeo night. Neighbors, reporters, kids fanning themselves with pamphlets, old folk sitting front row in lawn chairs. There were 5 nominees for board positions: me, Susan, Ricky, and 2 long-time residents who had never wanted the drama, just the peace. Tyler showed up too. He walked in, late dressed, in all black chewing gum with that smug smirk on his face. He didn't even run for a board seat. He just stood in the back, watching. Waiting the vote was paper-based, transparent, 1 ballot per household. The town clerk counted them out loud on the microphone as each name was called, and the votes stacked up. I could feel the tide turning. Susan won her seat, Ricky too, and then president of the HOA, Matthew Blake, 96 votes. Tyler Wilburn, right. In 7 votes, the hall erupted in applause. It wasn't a standing ovation. It was a sigh of relief. People hugged, some cried. One man actually brought a slice of pecan pie as a peace offering. But Tyler didn't clap. He stepped out into the hallway, staring at me as he passed. He didn't say a word, but as I followed him out to speak with him, to try just once to end this peacefully, I found something that froze me in my tracks. There on the hood of my truck was a single bullet and a note: "You took everything from my mother. Now I take everything from you."
The handwriting was unmistakable. Susan rushed out behind me, eyes wide. "Matt, we need protection." And she was right, because this wasn't just HOA drama anymore. This was personal warfare. Sheriff Mendes immediately placed officers outside my ranch.
Overnight, the town backed me, but that bullet said it all. Tyler wasn't done, and the next move, it would be his. What none of us knew was that he had already filed something at the county courthouse, and it was about to land like a bombshell. The envelope was thick and official-looking county seal, certified delivery. Dropped off at the ranch gate just as the rooster crowed. I opened it with shaking hands inside a lawsuit filed by Tyler Wilburn against Matthew Blake, alleging fraudulent land acquisition, trespassing, unlawful interference with community property, and get this, emotional distress. My jaw clenched as I scanned through the dense legalese. The signature at the bottom confirmed it. Tyler had filed for reversal of the land sale, the very sale that made me landlord over the HOA clubhouse, tennis courts, pool. Everything he wanted to tear the whole deal apart, wipe it clean, which meant if he won, they could claim the clubhouse land again, and maybe force me out of my own ranch. Using legal loopholes he had no business understanding on his own. That's when it clicked. He had help. A new name appeared in the filing: Bradley S. Tomlinson, Esker, the Wilburn family lawyer, a real shark from out of town, known for burying opponents. Under paperwork technicalities and drawn-out court fights, Tyler wasn't just acting on rage. Now he was strategizing. I sat on the porch with the letter in my lap for almost an hour, not speaking. Ricky pulled up and spotted me right away. That face. Don't look like a man who just won an election. I handed him the letter. He read it, then muttered, "This guy's off the rails." Susan joined us soon after. "I got one too," she said, holding a nearly identical envelope. "He's suing everyone who voted to remove his mother, says we colluded to defame her character." Defame? Ricky snorted. "She literally stole HOA funds. This
Isn't about winning in court," I said, finally standing. "It's about dragging us through it, making it so painful. We'd give up, but he doesn't know us," Susan added. "We don't back down, not after what we've come through still." The pressure was mounting. I
just rebuilt trust with the neighborhood. Now the whispers came back at the grocery store, at the hardware shop. Folks started asking again, is Matt really who we think he is? Maybe Tyler's just trying to get justice. Did Matt buy that land the right way? That last one stung, because yes, I did, but people don't need proof to believe a rumor. Just a little doubt. Sheriff Mendes came by that night with updates. "We've confirmed it." He said, "Tyler's been funding an anonymous neighborhood flyer campaign," they're calling it HOA Reborn, "accusing you of using shady deals to control the town. They're scared of what happens if I stay in power." I muttered. "No," he replied. "They're scared of what happens when people like you remind them how it's supposed to work, fair, honest, with your boots in the mud." That's when I knew what I had to do. Not fight this in court alone, but expose everything, every manipulation, every deal. Tyler tried to cover up every lie they fed the neighborhood. I hired a media investigator, small-town journalist turned watchdog named Claire Rogers. She'd covered land disputes for over a decade, had a reputation for digging up truths that lawyers tried to bury. She came out to the ranch with a mic and a notepad, sat with me, Susan, Ricky. She reviewed the old HOA minutes, the purchase records, the videos of Tyler near the barn and the workshop, the text messages we'd archived. And then she smiled. "They don't stand a chance if this hits public," she said. 3 days later, Claire published her piece, "The Truth Beneath Willow Creek: How a Rancher Saved a Community from Its Own HOA." It went viral. Not just local attention, statewide. Turns out people love a good underdog story, especially when a stubborn rancher stands up against the clipboard.
Tyranny of an HOA gone rogue. Local TV stations picked it up. The mayor reached out. Suddenly, Tyler's little
Lawsuit became the joke of the town. People tore down his flyers. Neighbors who had doubted me came back with homemade cookies and letters of apology. One old man left a note in my mailbox. Blake Ranch has been the heart of this town longer than any of us. Don't let them steal it. Still, we had to face court on the day of the hearing. The courthouse was packed. Tyler walked in with his shark lawyer, chin held high, like he was about to win an Oscar. He barely looked at me, but I watched him, not with anger now, but with something else, pity, because the truth had already caught up with him. Claire's report had gone to the judge before the hearing. So had the video footage, so had Aaron's written confession, and the HOA financial audit. Susan had turned over when it was time for our lawyer to speak. He stood tall and said simply, "Your Honor, we're requesting a full dismissal based on lack of evidence and overwhelming documentation showing that the defendant acted lawfully, ethically,
and in the best interest of the community."
The judge didn't take long. Motion granted. Tyler's face turned pale. He stood there, jaw twitching, fingers twitching at his sides, and for once he said nothing. No threat, no scream, just silence. Later that evening, I returned to the ranch. The sun was low, casting long shadows across the field. The animals were quiet, the breeze soft. I walked to my grandfather's headstone. The paint was gone now, cleaned and restored by some neighbors. While I was in court, fresh flowers lay at the base. A small card tucked beside them read, "Thank you for raising the kind of man who doesn't quit." I stood there a while thinking about everything, about the land, the fire, the fight, the legacy. Ricky joined me with 2 cold sodas. We popped them open to George Blake, he said. "To honesty," I added, and then as the psychers hummed and the stars blinked awake, I finally sat back in my chair and smiled, because the ranch was quiet again. The land was mine, the people were free, and the HOA, well, they now paid triple rent to me